What up, friends? This isn't my will, that's for sure, and today we're going to be reviewing Muse's newest album, Will of the People. This is the 9th album overall by English rock band Muse. Muse have had a varied career over the years, yet surprisingly they have remained one of the most prominent rock acts of the past decade or two. Their constant style switching can showcase some pretty interesting switch-ups in their sound, while also occasionally showcasing some of the sides of them that are less polished. As someone who actually really likes their eclectic stuff like the Second Law and Simulation Theory, I can handle a lighter sound from the group, but this album is really not great. It basically takes inspiration from the hard rock edge of Drones, which was already my least favorite album from them to begin with, and combines it with the synthy tendencies of Simulation Theory. However, all of this together just creates one of the most pseudo-revolutionary and bland albums that I've listened to in recent memory. I just feel nothing when I hear this album. It's honestly incredibly cheesy, and the opening title track, Will of the People, doesn't do much to help that image. It's both a nothing song with nothing too egregiously bad about it, while also being a showcase of a lot of the problems that modern Muse has. The riffs are pretty catchy on this one, going for a more glam rock angle, but goddamn nothing is being said on this track. The vocals are decently fun, but it is the blandest revolutionary song that I've ever heard. Like, listen, having one of these sort of like arena rock bangers is fine. Like, they have Uprising, right? But this is their 4th album since Uprising, and they're still doing it. It's like, really? It says nothing, rendering the instrumentals largely meaningless, and the background chant of Will of the People gets annoying pretty fast. Compliance is actually not that bad. I find it has a similar charm to the songs of Simulation Theory. It's super synthy with some fun bass lines in. Matt's vocals are also pretty interesting in their cadence, especially in the distinction between the verse and chorus. The guitar picking adds some nice texture to the track, and I find the general progression to be pretty smooth. The drums also keep this bounce going in the song, and I find the synth line to be very catchy without being overbearing. The lyrics are once again pretty generic, but since they focus more on like human connection instead of the vague political stuff, I find that they hit a bit harder here. Liberation is one of the slower songs on the project, and it's not that bad. It has vibes of albums like The Resistance and maybe even Explorers off of the Second Law. The vocals give off big Queen vibes, and I'm also really digging the drums on this track, almost treading into like breakbeat territory at times. It's pretty cool. The combination of elements here, like the strings and the synths, are melded pretty well, and Matt always was pretty good at these more operatic sort of tracks, and I also find the piano to be pretty engaging. Won't Stand Down is one of the worst songs on the record. Like, it's basically just an Imagine Dragons track with a breakdown. Like, I don't know what the fuck they were thinking here. It's so heavy-handed and like pseudo-macho. It just also doesn't really fit the vibe of everything that led up to this point. That's actually a big problem with this album in general, as the sound is just not consistent on it, especially compared to like even the previous record Simulation Theory, which was pretty much all synth pop. Everything is going in way different directions on this album. There's some interesting elements on this track, like the synths in the second verse, but the heavier sound of this one just makes it even cornier than it would be otherwise. I'm not a big fan of this one. You Make Me Feel Like It's Halloween actually is probably one of the better songs on the project, I think, because it owns its cheesiness. It feels like a sort of B-movie horror soundtrack. From the Transylvania church organ to the sound effects and bouncy synths, like, this one's pretty fun. It has those sinister undertones, but in a more exaggerated way, which makes the song feel a bit more tongue-in-cheek compared to a lot of other tracks on here. The lyrics do have a lot of horror references, but it also references domestic abuse under the COVID lockdowns. It's a bit weird to compare this topic to Halloween, but I actually do appreciate them delving a bit deeper in the lyrical content here, even going so far as to reference like manipulation tactics that abusers would use, like cutting people off from their friends or cutting their spouse off from their friends. At least this track is talking about something, you know? Kill or Be Killed is one of those tracks that just feels like Muse went harder song equals better song, right? It just has the same problems as Won't Stand Down. The harder instrumental, again, just makes these vague lyrics feel even cornier. The distorted vocals are also kind of cringy, and it's just a weird attempt at making the track edgier. It also doesn't even have a lot of variety on it, being one of the most straightforward rock songs on the project. That bridge is also hilarious, by the way. This one's just fucking boring, man. The final track on the record, We Are Fucking Fucked, is honestly the last notable song on the project, I think. I actually kind of like this one. It's very tongue-in-cheek, displaying a lot of humor, and I feel like it's probably the most self-aware song on the entire album. The opening riff is super smooth, and the track has that vibe of a quick and punchy jolt of energy that would be right at home in like an alternative punk song or something. The pre-chorus and chorus are pretty catchy, and the sort of fuzzy wall of sound aesthetic on this one is pretty different and unique compared to all of the other songs on the record. The combination of the more melancholic verses alongside the bombastic chorus is pretty interesting, and the transitions are also pretty fluid with how much they build up to each other. It's just a lot of nihilistic fun, and it's a fitting end for the project, I think. Overall, though, this record was disappointing, man. Not only was it sonically inconsistent and corny, but the lyrics are also probably some of the blandest that they've ever written. I wouldn't say much on this record is egregiously bad, but that's almost kind of the problem. It's so inoffensive that I feel basically nothing when I listen to it. There were a few songs that I didn't really talk about, but they were just too there to even really have an opinion on them. This is basically the Kylie Jenner Pepsi ad of music. It's filled with vague platitudes that want to make important statements but is too afraid to piss off anybody at all. If I wanted to listen to something hard or revolutionary or even both, I would listen to bands like Daughters or Idols or even Rage Against the Machine, bands that actually take a stand on something. At least with records like Simulation Theory, which are also cheesy, they embrace their cheesiness and they also have a fairly consistent sound that backs it up too. They're fun, but with albums like this and Drones, everything on it is so surface level to the point where I just feel nothing listening to it. Every time I hear a song from these albums, I'm just like, oh, I guess that song happened. Barely anything on here even holds my attention, and I really do feel like this is truly one of the albums of all time. I'm feeling a light 4 on this newest album by Muse. Of course, we do have to talk about album covers on this show, and this album cover is also just not very good. It literally reads like a mid-2000s, early 2000s nu metal album cover, complete with all the corniness, all the heavy-handedness. Like, the color scheme is okay, I guess, the sort of grays and oranges, evoking that sort of like sci-fi, dusty desert planet or something like that. But everything on this cover, it's like almost Drones level of overtness, like, really? But of course, those are just my thoughts on this newest album by Muse. What did you guys think? Do you think this is actually maybe a return to form for them? Or are you also really not feeling this album either? Let me know. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, ring the bell if this maybe was your will. Or maybe this review was your will. But until the next one, farewell.